covering the world of professional wrestling. This is the Signature Spot with Chris Toplack.
3, 2, 1.
Thank you very much for tuning into the latest episode of The Signature Spot with Chris Toplack. As always, I greatly appreciate your ongoing support. My voice has come and gone multiple times today. I'm half a bottle of Dayquil in. I have some lemon water right beside me. I should be good to go, but no promises. I won't take a deep breath here or there to make it through the program. If you're a first-time listener, first time tuning in, take off your shoes. Hope you stay a while. If you've come back, without you, this show would cease to exist. If you want to listen to new episodes of the show, they are available every single Thursday. YouTube, that is youtube.com/The Signature Spot. You can have a nice little slideshow. Photos as you listen to the show. Also on Spotify, gaining some good traction there. So follow The Signature Spot on Spotify. Also on Stitcher, iHeartRadio, iTunes, Google Play, Spreaker, and podcast apps such as Overcast. Plus, I'm all over social media. The Signature Spot on Facebook, at Chris Toplack on Twitter, and at Chris Toplack on Instagram. Also, thesignaturesspot.com. I actually posted some transcripts on there. So if you heard my Sasha Banks episode, also episode 25, Gargano versus Ciampa, the definitive timeline, I actually posted a whole bunch on there. So you can actually read it and listen to it as well. On the program today, Seth Rollins has a new title contender at Money in the Bank. I'll let you know who and my thoughts on that. Bray Wyatt returns with Firefly Fun House. My reaction. Kevin Owens turning on Kofi, and I'm joined by Kyle Scharf as we discuss the legacy of Dean Ambrose.
Your weekly recap.
We start off with Monday Night Raw, a massive ovation for Iowa's own Seth Rollins, one of the loudest burn it down chants to date. He found it surreal to be in his home state as Universal Champion and also in the ring with Triple H. Triple H said to Seth Rollins, "Now you are the measuring stick. Now everyone is gunning for you." Triple H further announced that there will be 2 triple threat matches with the winners squaring off to determine the number 1 contender for the Universal Championship at Money in the Bank. Right on cue, out came Samoa Joe. Although Michael Cole announced him as the newest member of the Raw roster, that was expected. Rey Mysterio, Drew McIntyre, The Miz, Baron Corbin, and AJ Styles all follow suit, and they stated their case. The first match, AJ Styles versus Samoa Joe versus Rey Mysterio, an excellent triple threat match with each man shining. I particularly enjoyed the finish, which saw AJ Styles powerbomb Rey Mysterio onto Joe, then follow up with the Styles Clash also onto Joe. Then AJ pinned the Samoan Submission Machine for the victory. Very creative. The second match, Naomi pinned Billie Kay with a sunset flip in less than 2 minutes. It hasn't been a good run, at least from a singles perspective, for the Iconics as of late. Third match, Baron Corbin defeated Drew McIntyre and The Miz after throwing the Scottish psychopath out of the ring and pinning the A-lister. This was all after a beautifully placed Claymore kick. The more I see it, the more I love that finisher. With the loss, I'm convinced Drew McIntyre will win the Money in the Bank contract. An obnoxious and preachy Sami Zayn made an appearance to remind us of how little he missed the WWE during his time away. He even highlighted several photos of his trips to Norway and Switzerland. It sounds like he would rather be a travel agent than a sports entertainer at this point. Cedric Alexander made his Raw debut in a losing effort against Cesaro. Yes, Cesaro was apparently a late addition to the Superstar shakeup and will now appear on Monday Night Raw. The Viking experience only lasted 1 week. Behold, the Viking Raiders in all their glory. They beat down Lucha House Party somehow, some way. The WWE managed to still maintain the Viking Experience reference, as it's now the name of their finisher. The crowd, quite honestly, seemed confused by this entire segment. Becky Two Belts defeated Alicia Fox, still employed, in a non-title match, and it was a clunky match. Not a lot of chemistry between those two. Alicia Fox just does not really shine in the ring. Lacey Evans entered the ring following the victory and hit Lynch with the woman's right. The newly dubbed Robert Roode defeated Ricochet with the glorious DDT. When I look at Robert Roode, I will now be reminded of the famous quote courtesy of Mr. Burns from the Homer at Bat Season 3 Simpsons episode, "Mattingly, I thought I told you to trim those sideburns." So basically, he looks 5 to 10 years older and resembles Rick Rude now. Then the vignette aired for Firefly Fun House. As expected, Bray Wyatt appeared, but in a V-neck sweater and far more clean cut. He resembled an over-the-top but creepy PBS host in the alternate world version of Blue's Clues. Mercy the Buzzard, the doll, and all of his little friends appeared. I honestly don't know what to make of this. Initially, I found it to be outrageously awful, but perhaps it will surprise us, with Bray eventually snapping. I will reserve judgment until I see more. Personally, I'm still longing for the Cape Fear-inspired Bray Wyatt to one day return. AJ Styles defeated Baron Corbin with a phenomenal forearm to become the #1 contender to the WWE Universal Championship. That's right, Seth Rollins versus AJ Styles at Money in the Bank should be an absolute barn burner. Overall, it was an odd episode of Monday Night Raw. About average, I don't really know what to make of it. Over to SmackDown Live, Shane McMahon opened the show by scolding Roman Reigns for attacking his father last week. Roman came out, the two squared off, until Elias came down as the two proceeded to beat up the big dog. Oh, he's going to pay for that one. Finn Balor defeated Andrade with a stunning coup de grace. He got some great height on that. Andrade and Finn Balor share such a natural chemistry in the ring. Yet another stellar performance from both men. Although what I did find somewhat baffling was the fact that the announce team did not do an adequate job of explaining why Andrade and Selena Vega are back on SmackDown Live. If you recall, they were moved over to Raw. They're back. The explanation was really just the fact that he is chasing the Intercontinental Championship. But with that logic, couldn't anybody just switch brands at this point? Then Elias sang a quick song challenging Roman Reigns at Money in the Bank. Shane McMahon confirmed it was official. They hopped in a limo, and they promptly drove off. Next up, Kairi Sane came out for a singles match joined by Asuka and Paige as she faced Peyton Royce. Sane won with the insane elbow. Mandy Rose and DeVille attempted to confront Asuka, Sane, and Paige, but were interrupted by Jinder Mahal and the Singh brothers. Apparently, the superstar shakeup is still in effect. What's the point of having a 2-day event if performers just keep randomly switching to different shows a week later? I need to know. Jinder was scheduled to have a match with Chad Gable, but Lars Sullivan jumped Chad and also took out the Singh brothers. R-Truth attempted to make the save, but ate a freak accident and a running powerbomb for his troubles. I believe they're utilizing Lars Sullivan quite nicely. Charlotte Flair went face-to-face with Becky Lynch for the first time since WrestleMania 35. As expected, Charlotte claimed she was never pinned or submitted to lose her title, which is completely true, but she also believes she deserves an automatic rematch at Becky Lynch. Lynch feels it's time to make way for new challenges, such as Mickie James, Ember Moon, and Bayley. Truthfully, we could do without Charlotte versus Becky Lynch for a long, long time. That's not to say we don't need to see it again. They just need to keep away for several months. It's time to clear up the logjam and move forward with some fresh feuds in matchups. A much more serious and aggressive Bayley came down. She challenged Charlotte to see who gets a shot against Becky Lynch. Despite it being a close contest, Charlotte Flair defeated Bayley. So that means Flair earns yet another title opportunity against Becky Lynch. Rinse, wash, repeat. Yet another vignette aired featuring Firefly Fun House and Bray Wyatt. I have to admit, the second time I watched it is starting to grow on me. And just a theory, but perhaps the story arc will reveal Bray Wyatt's alternate method of infiltrating the minds of children through this seemingly harmless persona in an effort to corrupt them. In the words of the Joker, it's all part of the plan. Kofi Kingston defeated Shinsuke Nakamura by DQ after Rusev interfered. Post-match, Kevin Owens promptly turned heel by super kicking Kofi Kingston and later powerbombing Woods onto the outside of the ring. Kevin Owens is the Scorpion, Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods, the Frog. Hopefully you get that reference. In Kevin Owens' mind, I tried to resist, but alas, I could not help myself. It is my nature. The moral of that famous fable is that people will be who they are. Trust takes time, and there is no substitute for time in the matter of trust. The New Day were foolish to trust Big O so soon.
The latest industry news and rumors.
Brad Shepard of the Oh You Didn't Know podcast commented on Sasha Banks and the possible plans for her on SmackDown Live. Sasha is scheduled to return to SmackDown Live before Money in the Bank. Whether they have something for her or not is still not clear. If they don't have something for her, it's still possible they could give her a bit of time to cool off. I am told that Jason Jordan is working as a catalyst between her and the rest of WWE management. I'm also told she has too much beef to go back to Raw this soon. He also had some comments on Daniel Bryan's suspected injury. So you may have heard the report that Daniel Bryan has an injury. He hasn't been on TV. This situation is intentionally being kept very quiet at a specific person's request, and unfortunately, I can't go into further detail except to say that he's injured. It's not his head, it's not overly serious, but it's bad enough for him to take some time off. PW Insider had reported that Jeff Hardy is also injured. This occurred at an April 20th house show. As of right now, he was sent home from SmackDown Live. He's resting up. Conrad Thompson revealed to SI.com, that's Sports Illustrated, that both The Undertaker and Kurt Angle have been pulled from StarCast 2. As expected, Vince McMahon caught wind of this, and he was not very receptive of having two of his major stars attending. Johnny Gargano recently threw out the first pitch for the Cleveland Indians. This took place yesterday for the game against the Miami Marlins at Progressive Field, although there was a major goof from the Cleveland Indians. On the graphic, and this was provided by Bodyslam.net, it had Johnny Gargano, WCW Triple Crown winner. Yeah, okay. A quick Google search would have rectified that. That's about 18 years too late. On NXT television, Jason Riker versus Humberto Carrillo was short but sweet and highlighted the offense of both men. The match ended in a DQ or no contest when Carrillo was deemed unable to continue. Candice LeRae versus Casey Canizaro defeated Aaliyah and Vanessa Bourne in a fairly average match. Casey displayed a ton of athleticism, but still needs to grow as an in-ring performer. Based on the conversation between Ono and Regal, it appears as though Kushida versus Cassius Ohno is lined up for next week. It should be a hard-hitting affair. I'm excited for the debut of Kushida. Since these tapings were filmed prior to the Viking Raiders name change, they were called the War Raiders here, and I loved the strategy from the Street Profits as they attempted to take advantage early on and pick up the quick victory. The match lasted just over 5 minutes, but it felt completely different than most tag matches in recent memory. If I had to compare it to anything, it almost felt as though it was a UFC fight that lasted one round, but it set a frenetic pace and it was highly unpredictable. A very unique yet enjoyable match with the War Raiders picking up the victory. Johnny Gargano defeated Roderick Strong in a non-title match. This was following a slingshot DDT after Adam Cole accidentally hit Strong thinking it was Gargano. Tensions continued to rise within the Undisputed Era. Are they a well-oiled machine or breaking apart at the seams? As expected, it was a solid match, but the finish was a little convoluted with the Undisputed Era getting involved and Matt Riddle running down to cut them off. I have a sneaking suspicion Strong's tenure in the group won't last, or perhaps it's just a ruse, so Johnny lets his guard down yet again. In January, it was announced that Dean Ambrose would be leaving the WWE and not re-signing his contract. It's unknown at this moment whether he's actually going to go elsewhere, but the latest rumblings is that he's actually going to retire. In chatting with Sky Sports, he had the following to say, "This time, the $1 Million Man didn't get what he wanted because I can't be bought. Never say never, he could be back. But today, the topic of the week is focused on the legacy of Dean Ambrose, career highlights in his best matches. I'm joined by Kyle Scharf up next.
Our topic of the week.
Last Sunday, the Lunatic Fringe, Dean Ambrose made his final WWE appearance during Shield's final chapter. Dean did not renew his WWE contract, with reports stating that he will retire as opposed to joining a rival promotion. I'm joined by Kyle Scharf. Kyle, if you had to define Dean Ambrose in one word, what would it be?
In terms of his WWE run, I would say underutilized.
Yeah, so mine was misused. So same sort of philosophy, too. I believe that he had all of the tools to be one of the top guys. And for that matter, he was. But it could have been extended even further.
Oh, he could have been on that same level that both Reigns and Rollins are now. I remember when he first signed back in the day, I was thrilled. I'm not going to claim to be like the biggest John Moxley mark or anything, but I was definitely aware and a fan of what he could do. And I felt like, and I know you and I have had this discussion, that he could have been the modern day Brian Pillman. And it just wasn't to be.
And maybe that was the problem, is that to me, I always felt that he just needed to be the modern day Dean Ambrose. And he needed to find that identity, who he was, what he was. And I believe as though I have faith in his abilities, both on the microphone, as a persona, and also in the ring. I just don't believe the WWE said, have the reins, let loose, be yourself.
Yeah, they always wanted him to be playing a character
or comical.
Oh God, some of the stuff that I'm sure we're going to be touching on was ridiculous. One that stands out is definitely like the hot dog cart incident, and just there's so much more he had to offer that just never came to be.
But that being said, he was still a part of many great matches. And before we look at some of those matches and career highlights, I wanted to go over a few trivia facts along with some accolades here. So as a youth, Dean Ambrose idolized Bret the Hitman Hart. That was his favorite wrestler. So good taste.
Definitely good taste. I 100% agree with him on that one.
Dean appeared as part of The Undertaker's entrance at the 2006 Royal Rumble. He was actually a druid. If you look it up on YouTube, you can actually see him there. Did you know about that one?
I forgot about it, but you bring it up. I do kind of recall thinking, I've gone back and watched that. That was the one where he showed up and made the ring with Kurt Angle in it.
I believe so.
Explode. Yeah, so I don't think there was as much of a druid entrance as normal, but I do vaguely recall that one, yes.
Two more. As John Moxley, he had a tryout for TNA back in 2009. And finally, Dean Ambrose wrestled William Regal in the final episode of Florida Championship Wrestling.
Oh, and what a great match that had to have been. Like, Regal can make magic with pretty much anyone when he wants to. So I believe that would have been one to watch. Didn't they have? I recall them having like a pretty heated feud back in FCW before it became, what we know today as NXT.
I do believe so. Yeah, there was a couple different people that had feuds with William Regal. I believe Cesaro was one of them, and some others as well.
Oh my God, the matches just dream matches, really, for guys like us who, enjoy the technical and scientific aspect of the sport.
So let's talk about his debut. It was very memorable. It was November 2012. This is on the main roster. He made his main roster debut at Survivor Series alongside Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins. They were in their black turtlenecks. They triple powerbombed Ryback through an announce table, and this allowed CM Punk to retain the WWE Championship against John Cena in that match.
Well, I was a huge Punk mark at the time, in many ways, still am. And seeing Ryback get beat up is always a good thing because I hate him with a passion.
Well, tell me how you really feel. Jeez.
Yeah, never was really a fan of that guy. And I remember watching that pay-per-view and losing my mind over the fact that, Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins were hitting the main roster. Reigns at the time hadn't really been overly known and impressive. I think he was wrestling as Leaky back in NXT, FCW.
Yeah, he had more of like the island gimmick at the time.
Yeah, so there wasn't as much known about him. I believe it was supposed to be, when Punk pitched it, it was going to be Cassius Ohno in that spot. But obviously Reigns, they had plans to strap the rocket to him, and it was definitely a good choice.
So moving ahead, Dean's first singles championship was the United States Championship when he defeated Kofi Kingston at Extreme Rules 2013. So he would go on to hold the United States Championship for 351 days. Seems like an incredible feat, but he did not really defend it all that much, did he?
No, I would be surprised if anyone could name 5 defenses off the top of their head. That was back in the era when both the IC and the US titles were just persona non grata.
Sure, they were almost like fixed. They weren't fixtures at that point. They were just props.
Definitely.
The Shield faced off against the Wyatt family at Elimination Chamber 2014. I jump ahead a little bit. Arguably the best of their many matches together. If you recall, the Wyatt family went on to win after Bray hit Sister Abigail on Roman Reigns.
Yes, I would make an argument that may have been the best 6-man tag match in WWE history.
It's got to be up there.
It was an incredible match. When you start a match where the fans are chanting, "This is awesome," before anyone even locks up, you have something special on your hands.
Right around that time, they had a great match on Raw, too.
Yeah, they were just having... Well, the Shield were basically the masters of the 6-man tag.
Yes.
They were having great 6-man tag matches all over the place. But I think none were better than the ones with the Wyatt family and Evolution.
Yes, and speaking of Evolution, Seth Rollins, Dean Ambrose, and Roman Reigns took on Triple H, Randy Orton, and Batista. That was Payback 2014. Easily one of the Shield's best matches.
Yes, was it Payback was the second one, right?
Yes, this was the one where they fought, I believe, all over the arena.
Yeah, and Rollins went flying off the balcony.
Yes.
In a very ECW New Jack-like moment.
Yeah,
But,
it was.
There was one of the matches I remember at that time, because they were teasing the dissension with the Shield, where Ambrose just fought into the crowd and then just disappeared. I think that might have been the match on Raw with the Wyatts, because everyone was expecting Dean,
Yes.
because they knew his history, was going to be the guy to go, bad on the Shield, and obviously they threw us a swerve, bro.
Definitely, because hey, it wasn't too long after that. It was the June 2nd edition of Raw. Rollins betrayed Ambrose and Reigns. He allied himself with the Authority. Ambrose immediately started to feud with Rollins. This led to a great match on the August 18th edition of Monday Night Raw. That was back in 2014. This was a Falls Count Anywhere match. Rollins won the match via referee stoppage. Kane interfered in that match.
Yes, obviously that would have been right post Money in the Bank, where Kane cost Ambrose the briefcase.
That is correct.
Rollins could win. I don't remember that particular match off the top of my head, but I do know, obviously, other than the debacle last year, Rollins and Ambrose had great chemistry together as partners or opponents.
And perhaps their finest moment together was at Hell in a Cell 2014. It was Dean Ambrose versus Seth Rollins. That was really the blow-off of the feud there. I believe it was even Bray Wyatt that interfered in that match.
Yes, wasn't that the ghost of Bray Wyatt?
Something along those lines. I just remember it was a very bizarre finish.
Yeah, they and Ambrose is in his element in a match like that, given his history on the independent scene, and I think it was CCW.
It was.
He was definitely in a position to, have a great match, but much like would actually, speaking of Bray Wyatt, kind of hinder his career, bad finishes seem to become the norm, unfortunately for him.
Yes.
Because I think it was Eric Bischoff who said, you can have a great show, for example, and, a 10 out of 10 show, but you blow it in the main event or the ending. That's what leaves the taste in people's mouths. That's what they remember, walking out of the arena, turning off the TV, whatever it may be. And I think that was one of the things that really, unfortunately, had a kind of a damper on Dean's WWE run.
Unfortunately. So we jump ahead to 2015. I believe not exactly his most memorable year because much of it I will cover in 2016, but he did have a great match at WrestleMania 31, one of my all-time favorite events, with Bad News Barrett, Daniel Bryan, Dolph Ziggler, Luke Harper, R-Truth, Stardust. It was the opening match. It was a ladder match for the WWE Intercontinental Championship. Daniel Bryan ended up climbing up the ladder and winning, but it was very memorable, a hot way to kick off the show.
Absolutely. I would place it maybe number 3 on the best opening matches in WrestleMania history, behind only Triple H and Daniel Bryan at 30, and then obviously Bret and Owen at 10. A great match. He took some nasty falls in that one. Was it Luke Harper that powerbombed him through the ladder?
I believe so, but yeah, he took a big bump there.
And yeah, that was a Jeff Hardy-like bump that just looked nasty. I remember, I think watching it, I screamed, "He's dead."
Wow.
So, it's a good bump when.
So we look at 2016, and when you take a look at Dean Ambrose during that entire calendar year, one could make the argument that he was actually the MVP of the WWE in 2016. And it all kicked off really for me, Dean Ambrose versus Kevin Owens, a last man standing match for the Intercontinental Championship, Royal Rumble 2016.
Definitely that was probably the highlight of that entire card. The Rumble itself that year was actually good, but that match was brutal. And, those two guys coming from the indie scene, then being on the big cards, they go out there and they're not afraid to lay them in. And again, much like with Rollins, he had some good magic with Kevin Owens.
Definitely. We skip ahead a month. Dean Ambrose versus Brock Lesnar versus Roman Reigns to determine the number one contender for the WWE World Heavyweight Championship at WrestleMania 32. Dean Ambrose faced off against both of them. He came up short. We know that Roman Reigns won. Dean Ambrose went on to face Brock Lesnar, but that was a hell of a match, despite the fact the Lesnar match was pretty underwhelming.
I remember going into WrestleMania 32, the match I was looking most forward to was Ambrose and Lesnar. I thought that one had the potential to, steal the show and be one for the record books.
Just no chemistry.
No chemistry. Lesnar didn't want to put his working boots on, according to Ambrose. And just an utter disappointment in so many ways, unfortunately. And it sucks because I love Lesnar. I love Ambrose. But it just didn't work out there.
Some more matches to highlight in 2016. Triple H, who was the champion at the time, versus Dean Ambrose at Roadblock. That was March 2016. I was in attendance for that match, and it was great. High drama. There were times where I thought Dean Ambrose, despite the fact the logic said he was never going to win, may had actually pulled out the victory over the game Triple H.
I thought, WWE could really shake up what was looking to be an internet-wide hated WrestleMania card, and they could have shook everything up by giving Ambrose the win there. They did the Dusty finish. It was still a great match. I thought they had great chemistry. And there were times where I thought, much like yourself, that Ambrose is actually going to pull this off.
It was possible. Now, it was possible at Money in the Bank. Dean Ambrose won it in 2016. He then went on to cash in later on in the evening on Seth Rollins to win the WWE Championship. If you recall, Kyle, Seth had just defeated Roman Reigns with 2 pedigrees, and Dean Ambrose being one of the first people, I believe, to cash it in on the same night.
Yeah, I think the only other one was Kane way back when on Rey Mysterio. And I remember, I think that was also Rollins' like first official match back from his injury.
It was.
So it was a really good ending to the match between where he kind of caught Reigns in the spear into the pedigree.
Yes.
And then Ambrose cashing in. That arena was electric. And I think, you know, wrestling nerds all over the world kind of
they rejoiced, right?
Yeah, we were happy because at that point it seemed like Ambrose was never going to be the guy anymore, and never get that shot to be the champ. But there he did, and of course setting up a match I'm sure is probably coming up here that we're going to talk about, the big triple threat between the Shield.
Yes, at some point that is actually coming up, but there's a couple that I do want to highlight at this rate. We can obviously talk about that one too, but one that I really want to talk about is Dean Ambrose actually being drafted number 1 to SmackDown. He eventually went on to face AJ Styles in what I believe to be his best singles match in the WWE to date at Backlash 2016.
Yes, 100%. That was when AJ was, it's funny thinking about it. He kind of went on in his title reigns to be a victim of that poorly booked finish thing. But those two just went out there and absolutely rocked it. And I know they had more than one match, but was it the first one where Styles finally won the strap?
Yeah, so he won that match, and then they rematched at WWE TLC 2016, which was also for the WWE Championship, and Styles picked up the win to retain that one.
Yeah, the one image I remember from that was, I think it was a 450.
Through the table.
And I was just like, oh, man, there's not a lot of guys who would agree to take that, but obviously, Ambrose has got to live up to that Lunatic Fringe name.
Definitely. And one, of course, that was on there that you mentioned was the triple threat between the Shield. I want to jump ahead to 2017. It was Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose versus Sheamus and Cesaro SummerSlam for the Raw Tag Team Championship. Upon winning the Raw Tag Team Championship, Dean Ambrose became the 27th Triple Crown champion, the 16th Grand Slam champion.
It's funny. You look back on his entire career and you would not think that he would, even knowing, what we know today, Ambrose doesn't stand out as a guy who hit the Triple Crown or the Grand Slam, but he kind of did it almost under the radar for many fans and definitely deserving. And weird that it, in a way, because I think he was the last member of the Shield to hit that. And, everyone thought he was going to be the big star going out of the Shield when they first debuted.
Dean Ambrose, of course, returned. He had an 8-month absence from television. He had surgery. He had multiple injuries. He was basically the workhorse of the WWE for many years, similar to his idol, Bret Hart. So he teamed up with Seth Rollins, returned, took on the team of Drew McIntyre and Dolph Ziggler for the Raw Tag Team Championship. It was Hell in a Cell.
One of the better matches of the year, 100%.
Definitely.
I think if you go on WWE Network and look at the Superstar picks, Drew actually picked that match as one of his favorite matches of all time.
Hard not to.
And yeah, it was the chemistry between all 4 of those guys. Again, I know I keep harping on chemistry, but in a way, that's something that's so crucial. And those guys just, again, not afraid to lay them in and go right to town.
I'm focusing on the highs. I don't want to focus on the lows. Of course, he had his heel run. It wasn't exactly successful. We'll just say that was a lot of bad booking and just poor execution in general. But Dean Ambrose, Roman Reigns, and Seth Rollins took on Baron Corbin, Bobby Lashley, and Drew McIntyre at WWE Fastlane 2019. They reunited for the last time on a pay-per-view. It was Roman Reigns' first match back after his battle with leukemia. wow, that was an incredible match.
Really great match. Very emotional.
It was.
I think because everyone knew, Ambrose is on his way out. Reigns is just coming back from the battle with leukemia.
Remember on Raw, he was saying one last time, and remember, Dean kind of relented. He teased that he wasn't going to do it, then he put his fist in, and you had Seth Rollins, just that audible, yeah, and it was a great moment.
Oh, 100%. One of the better moments on what many might argue is a bit of a dumpster fire that is Raw as of late. Great moment. Definitely fan service and service to the talent, and a great kind of final lasting image for the Shield.
Yeah, and especially from Sunday as well. And I have to admit, I've been saddened by this entire situation. If it is true that he's at least retiring, whether that's temporary or not, or whether he does go to a competing organization, I'm really going to miss him. I thought that he was a fixture on television. I thought that he was misused. But even though he was misused, he still got over, and we'll talk about that in his legacy in just a second.
Yeah, 100%. Like, a lot of bad booking that he managed to overcome, I'd say 85-90% of the time.
So when discussing his legacy, I believe Dean Ambrose should go down as one of the most dependable stars of the modern era. Also, when fans rejected Roman, the majority turned to Dean Ambrose, and that should not be forgotten either.
No, 100%. Like, Rollins was the evil guy. Reigns was the guy being shoved down our throat, and Ambrose was the guy we wanted to see succeed.
Absolutely. And while he suffered from a lot of bad booking, he really did attempt to make the most of it. I know at times, such as the Austin podcast, where it seemed as though he was somewhat lackadaisical and, would just be somewhat perceived as lazy. I really do feel that he did make the most of it. And aside from that recent time rehabbing multiple injuries, he never missed any dates. If they just allowed him to be himself, as I mentioned off the hop, I believe he would have been an even bigger star in the WWE.
I think he would be in that position that we kind of saw Kofi in leading into WrestleMania, except, a few years back, he would have been that bridge between Yes Mania and Kofi Mania. We would have had Dean Mania somewhere in there.
Well, they say in pro wrestling that the only thing for sure is nothing's for sure. Never say never. Perhaps we will see Dean Ambrose again. We'll definitely see you again, Kyle. Thanks for joining me on the program today.
Thank you again for having me.
You're listening to The Signature Spot with Chris Toplack.
The Dayquil held up. It did me well. I made it to the very tail end of the program. Non-drowsy, by the way. They're not a sponsor, but they should be. Now I transition to the drowsy stuff, the NyQuil, as I enjoy a nice slumber and enjoy some truly bizarre dreams. If I wrote down what I dreamed about on NyQuil, I could have a 4-part Netflix series just like that. In all seriousness, thank you very much for continuing to support this program, gaining a lot of traction on YouTube and Spotify. If you know anyone who enjoys pro wrestling and particularly pro wrestling podcasts, spread the word of the Signature Spot. I would greatly appreciate it. And until next Thursday, happy trails to you until we meet again.
This concludes another episode of The Signature Spot with Chris Toplack. For new episodes, subscribe on YouTube, Stitcher, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, or iTunes. And don't forget to follow The Signature Spot on Facebook for exclusive clips, polls, and opinions.